this video, we are going to talk about endocrine glands. What are endocrine glands? Are glands of the endocrine system that secrete products, which are hormones, directly into the blood rather than to a duct. In order to understand what are the endocrine gland functions, we have to talk about receptors. The ability of a target cell to respond to a hormone depends on the presence of receptors within the cells or on its plasma membrane to which the hormone can bind. Hormone receptors are dynamic structures. Changes in number and sensitivity of hormone receptors may occur in response to high or low levels of stimulating hormones. Now we have the major endocrine glands.
They are the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas, the thyroid and parathyroids, the adrenals, the gonads, and in the head, the pituitary.
Interaction of hormones and target cells. First, we have permissiveness. It is a situation in which a hormone cannot exert its full effects without the presence of another hormone. Synergism, it occurs when two or more hormones produce the same effects in a target cell and the results are amplified. And finally, antagonism, it occurs when a hormone opposes or reverses the effect of another hormone. And what about control of hormone release? Endocrine organs are activated to release their hormones by humoral, neural, or hormonal stimuli. Negative feedback is important in regulating hormone levels in the blood. The nervous system acting to hypothalamic controls can in certain cases override or modulate hormonal effects. Now we are going to watch a video about the first part of endocrine glands.
Is the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is located right here, dangling right below, and so the hypothalamus is about the size of a grape. And the pituitary gland is actually about the size of a green pea. But this little green pea is so important that it's called the master gland. And it's called the master gland because the pituitary gland takes that stimulation from the hypothalamus and it directs it to all of the other endocrine glands, or at least almost all of the other endocrine glands, such that their function is ultimately dependent on the pituitary gland to work well. And so that little green pea is a really important part of the endocrine system. And so one of the endocrine glands that the pituitary directs is the thyroid gland. And the thyroid gland is located right here in your neck. It wraps around your trachea. And your trachea is your windpipe, and so you can feel this thyroid gland on your neck as you swallow. If you hold your hands right around your Adam's apple and swallow, that meaty thing moving up and down, that's your thyroid gland. And one of its main jobs is regulating your body's metabolism. And it does that through the thyroid hormones T3 and T4. And another name for T3 is triiodothyronine, and another name for T4 is thyroxine. But the thyroid uses these hormones, the thyroid hormones, to stimulate the body's metabolism, which is crucial because that's how our body gets energy. And then right behind the thyroid gland are 4 spots known collectively as the parathyroid. And the main role of the parathyroid is regulating our body's blood calcium level. And the level of calcium in our blood is hugely important because calcium does a lot of stuff in our bodies. It's involved in muscle contraction, it's involved in bone growth, and all of those functions are really sensitive to the level of calcium that's floating around in our blood. And so the parathyroid glands, those 4 spots on the back side of our thyroid, regulate calcium through the hormone, parathyroid hormone, or PTH.
We have named the major endocrine glands, but they are not the only one or the only hormone-producing structures. We have many body organs not normally considered endocrine organs contain isolated cell clusters that secrete hormones. Examples include the heart, with atrial natriuretic peptide, gastrointestinal organs with gastrin secreting and others, the placenta, with hormones of pregnancy, estrogen, progesterone, and others, the kidneys with erythropoietin and renin, and the thymus, skin, cholecalciferol, and adipose tissue, leptin, and resistin. Now we have the final part of the major endocrine glands.
And then moving down the torso, we have the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are located right on top of the kidneys here. And they're called the adrenal glands because they're adjacent to, or right next to, the kidney system, which is called the renal system in medical speak. But we really need to further divide the adrenal glands into two parts, the outer part and the inner part. So the outer part is the cortex, and the inner part is the medulla. And the reason for the distinction is that the inside and the outside of the adrenal glands have two different functions. And so we'll start with the outside, or the cortex, and that's where the steroids, the adrenal corticosteroids, are made. And two major examples of steroids made in the adrenal cortex are cortisol and aldosterone. And cortisol is one of the body's stress hormones, so it functions to increase blood sugar in times of stress, so we have energy, and it also has some anti-inflammatory functioning. And then aldosterone is one of the major regulating hormones of our body's blood volume, and how much fluid is in our veins and arteries. And so that's the cortex. And then the medulla makes a class of hormones called catecholamines. And two major examples of catecholamines are epinephrine and norepinephrine. And I'm going to shorten those as epi and norepi. And sometimes epinephrine is called adrenaline, and that might be a little bit more familiar to you, but these catecholamines are really involved in our body's fight or flight response, that adrenaline response that we have to a stressful or scary situation. And so the medulla and the cortex make up the adrenal glands, but moving down the list and down the body, we have the gonads. And in females, those are the ovaries. And in males, the testes. And the gonads release the sex hormones. And so in males, the testes produce testosterone, and in females, the ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone. But these sex hormones are mainly involved in the development of our secondary sex characteristics, like pubic hair and larger frames in males and breasts in women, but they're also involved in progressing us through those life stages that accompany those sex characteristics, like puberty and menopause. And then last but not least, we have the pancreas. And it's located right here in the upper part of the abdomen. And I saved the pancreas for last because it isn't involved as directly with the pituitary glands as the other endocrine hormones were, but it still uses those hormones to stimulate an effect in a different part of the body. And the effect that the pancreas stimulates is control over the blood sugar. And it does that through the hormones insulin and glucagon. And the pancreas is vitally important because without its hormones insulin and glucagon, we can't regulate how much sugar is in the body's blood versus the cell.
Developmental aspects of the endocrine system. Endocrine glands derive from all three germ layers. Those derived from mesoderm produce steroidal hormones. The others produce the amino acid-based hormones. The natural decrease in function of the female's ovaries during late middle age results in menopause. The efficiency of all the endocrine glands seems to decrease gradually as aging occurs. This leads to a generalized increase in the incidence of diabetes mellitus and a lower metabolic rate. Now we have hypersecretion and hyposecretion. Hypersecretion is when too many hormones are secreted from a gland, and hyposecretion is when too few hormones are released. There are many types of disorders that can result when too much or too little of hormone is released. In the case of adrenal glands, we have Addison's disease, adrenogenital disease, Cushing syndrome, and pheochromocytoma. In the case of the pancreas, we have diabetes and hypoglycemia. In the case of parathyroid, we have tetany, renal calculi, excessive loss of mineral from bone. And finally, from pituitary, we have growth hormone deficiency, acromegaly, diabetes, gigantism, and diabetes insipidus. Finally, that's all for our video. Thanks for your attention.